Hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here. It is Basketball Rewind, and I'm here joined by a couple usual suspects as well as someone new. Today, we are joined by the wonderful JD. He writes for Raptors HQ. He covers a lot of the 905 stuff, so I will definitely have him back on this channel to talk about some Summer League games and obviously G League throughout the season. I am embarrassed to say that I do watch some of the G League games throughout the season on YouTube. But with that being said, I'm also joined by Beyond the Locker Room, of course, as well as Coach Roache. I'm starting a new thing on this channel where I'm going to start to preview some of the topics that we talk about rather than just jumping into them. So, today we are going, or I guess tonight, if you can't tell by my background, we are going to be talking about a couple things. Number one, we're going to continue talking about Fred because Fred seems to be a hot topic this week. The second thing that we're going to be talking about is roster construction because I think that that's really interesting because guess what? We have 14 guaranteed spots currently. We'll see if that changes, but that still means that we have one spot that is unaccounted for. We're probably not going to be talking about the two ways today, but we may get into a little bit of the summer league because that is interesting since it is starting as at the time of this filming. Not necessarily the Las Vegas one, but in general it is. So, with that being said, I'm going to go around and ask each of you, how are you doing? And anyone can start.
I can start. Like I'm in the middle of nowhere right now, so I hope my internet holds up.
I'm good, man. I'm still on that cloud nine right now, man. For what this the past weekend, so I'm ready to talk.
Coach?
I'm doing well myself. I was in Ottawa for the weekend while all this was going on, but good to be back in the around the Toronto area now. So, like Beyond said, I'm very thrilled with what had happened over the weekend as well.
Absolutely. It's I mean as we're coming into the final stretch of what may or may not happen for free agency because I think after a certain point we all know that this front office doesn't do too many things from that standpoint. It's going to be interesting to see what comes up. But quickly, we lost a certain member of the Toronto Raptors. I talked about it with Beyond. That show, by the time that this is posted, will have been posted. So people definitely check that show out. But with that being said, it was very interesting again to see the media's reaction. Now, JD, I don't consider you part of the mainstream media or anything like that, but I'm just curious about your thoughts in terms of, have you ever seen a reception like this for a Toronto sports star, I guess, ever?
Not for Raptor star, but or Toronto star, but this is probably how it felt like when the Bulls didn't come back anymore, like after the second three-peat, when they don't have MJ, like Scottie Pippen and those guys. That's how it felt. Like reading how like how some of these writers are talking about, right?
Yeah, it felt like Prince just died.
Yeah.
Like it's like, man, we got to have a funeral procession pretty soon coming up. But yeah, I've just never seen this before. I'll just quickly give my thoughts. You know, Fred was a very good player for sure. I think he left this team as a champion, and maybe I'll catch a little bit heat for this, but yeah, I think when all is said and done with all the accolades and everything, he's probably a definitely like top seven or top whatever. I don't like ranking people, but he's up there in terms of Raptors legends, if you will. I don't know if I'm in favor of building a statue personally. Uh, the money could be better spent on other things like maybe the next roster spot or something like that. But I definitely do think that he will. To quote Doug Smith, there was no one but the Toronto media that could ever love this man, right? So or something
Mhm.
to that effect. So I think other than that, do you guys have any thoughts on the departure of Fred? I think the interesting thing is probably going to be how that final stage of him leaving went during free agency. So, any thoughts?
I'll hand the mic over to Coach or JD about it because I've said my piece a little bit in the previous show, so I'll let them have the floor.
JD, you go. You're the
Yeah.
guest somewhat on the show.
Okay. I mean, I love Fred, but I've made it known that I'd rather not have him come back, right? And I'm just happy that we didn't go for the price that he got from Houston, right? Um, he's got his pros and cons, and I think he will help the Rockets. Like whatever they say about his leadership and all that stuff, um, I think that's way better than what they have or what they've had up until this point. So that's gonna be a good thing for them. But like from our point of view, yeah, like we lost our lead point guard. But I don't know. I just want to see something new at this point. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think he's gonna age a lot in that system, in terms of gray hairs. Uh,
Yeah, there was a picture, right? Like of
yeah,
floating around.
yeah, I did see that actually. It's a great Photoshop, but I do think that he will make the Rockets better. This is one of the first years that I would suggest people, if you're going to do fantasy basketball, I would pick Fred up for sure, because he's going to be a great fantasy squad. I get into that closer to fantasy season. It's a little bit early to start
I
looking at
I would
drafts.
I would avoid him late in the season
Yes,
when they start sitting him.
true. That's true. That's true.
Mhm.
But yeah, so actually here's a question for all of you. This is a little bit off script, but do they make the play in?
No.
Yeah, I looked at the West
It's stacked.
and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah,
Like,
not yet, not yet.
they might be battling Portland for that like final spot if they're lucky.
No, which final spot for what? For
True.
the lottery pick?
No, no. Oh, right. That's true. That's true. That's right. Portland's trying to take a step back here. My bad. My bad. Um, so yeah, to continue on with the show, we picked up a person that I know Coach really wants to talk about. He's Coach's guy. He's been talking about him. He's been talking him up. Jalen McDaniels. So I'm gonna get everyone's thoughts on Jalen McDaniels. Beyond you and I talked about him a little bit, but I think this is gonna be more of a deep dive today. So yeah.
Well, we've talked about this 6'9" vision of I think there's an ideal that Masai wants to see. And when you look at a guy like Jalen McDaniels and what he could bring, I'll say this, maybe 3 of the last 4 years he was in Charlotte. I think he shot over 37% from three, shot 40% this year when he was in Philly for 25 games. Now, shots in Philly are going to come a lot easier for him than they would in Charlotte when you're playing with Embiid and Harden. And I suspect that they're going to come roughly the same if he's on the floor with Siakam and Scotty and stuff like that. So I'm a really big fan of getting Jalen McDaniels. He was someone in the free agency that I thought for sure Philly was going to bring back. It would have made a ton of sense if they did. And we get him for 2 years, 9.5 million or 9.3 million. That could be such a potential steal for us. Underrated pickup. I heard a lot from my some of my basketball friends. And they were saying too was like, how did we get Jalen McDaniels for so cheap? That kind of thing. I mean, he's 25 years old, 6'9", the brother of Jaden McDaniels. A lot of upside there from him as well. Like I see him not only helping this year with his team, but he could be a potential stopgap moving forward if other moves are made. Which would not shock me at all. So when we look at our bench moving forward too, with Jalen McDaniels coming off the bench, I feel fantastic knowing that he might be coming in. He's here, I'll say seventh man, maybe right now, potentially. I'm assuming that Schroeder's going to be the sixth man, which he should be, with that starting lineup of potentially Scotty being point guard. But I think McDaniels, he's one of those guys. He's versatile. He can play the three, he can play the four. If you really want to go big, he might be able to play some two and stuff like that. I think defensively, he's probably a guy who can guard maybe three spots, maybe two threes and fours. I don't see him guarding fives or anything. But I'm a big fan of this pickup. I'm really shocked that Philly did not retain him because I look at Philly's roster now with potentially Tobias Harris leaving, and we don't know about Harden and stuff like that. They could have used someone who can stretch the floor like him, like put shooters around Embiid and Harden. you're going to have some success. Finally, this year, God willing, we're going to put some shooters around Pascal and Scotty. So I think McDaniel's a great pickup, underrated. Kudos to the front office for doing so.
JD?
Yeah, I think like we might be looking at this like 2 years, 3 years down the road where this could potentially be the best free agent signing of Masai's tenure here, right? Um, I like one of the things that I really didn't enjoy watching, or not just last year, but the past 2 years, is that our bench they lack functional players. Like players that can do like that can do a lot of things, right? Like Jalen, he's like one of those guys that while he doesn't do anything like at the elite level, like he's well rounded enough where if he's a guy that's coming off your bench, like he'd be able to play with your key players and like find his spot within the offense. You don't really need to, like you don't need to run anything for him, and he'll pick his spots. Like he'll try to make an impact offensively.
Hey man, like JD said, I think like this is finally picking up like a professional NBA player and what it's going to look like, and this bench is going to look like that for the first time in a couple of years. Where you actually, I like the word you use, JD, that functional. Folks that know what they're doing, folks that know how to play. We're not teaching them how to play. We're not trying to sculpt them into a player. They know what to do. If ball is going to be on this side, I can do a backdoor cut if they're overplaying me. Things of that nature, like basic functional things like that. I will pop out in this guy if he's sagging in this case here, and know those type of things. And to your point, JD, we don't have to teach that. It's a wonderful thing. Welcome to the NBA, Raptors. It's been nice seeing you back in the mix.
That's right. I mean, we're in a way to that point. We're almost lucky we're not in like a European soccer system where you're relegated down or up. I agree with you. I think it was a really really good sneaky underrated pickup. I'm shocked that they actually use the biannual exception because usually they don't use all of their exceptions, or they try to get cute with the mid-level exception where they break it up. Or that, like, I'm glad that they use both of the exceptions in the way that I think is going to maximize their chances of building out that bench. Over the past couple years, I'd say that we'll just focus on the past two. We have struggled to put together a bench with that you could confidently say that these guys would not just play on the Raptors, but could also confidently and did recently confidently play realistic minutes. I last time I checked, wrong brother, Jalen McDaniels played in the playoffs, correct, with Philly.
Yep.
Schroeder played in. I mean, I was trying to explain this earlier to a couple people, but it's like, last I checked, I did watch some Laker games. They usually are on prime time. It was
Schroeder's always in the playoffs. That's the thing.
That's the other thing too. He is always in the playoffs.
Every spring, you look at a team, more likely Schroeder's on somebody's roster.
Yes.
Yep, and as I've said to you guys, he was LeBron's second best guard to Austin Reeves, and wasn't close.
Yep.
Their best point of attack defender too.
Yep.
Yes.
Pesky.
So, I mean, again, people, I don't think that this is like, I'm not saying that Schroeder is Fred or anything like that, but I think we have, I guess the question that is not being asked to Toronto media or not being pushed back, and this is something that I think is the interesting inflection point would it have been worth it to potentially lose depth when you had no depth to begin with, and instead use all that money on Fred, or is it better to do what we did where we had actually forced our hand to build some depth? Yeah. So I'll I don't know why if you guys want to give a response, I know what Beyond thinks clearly, but we can quickly.
I'm enjoying the sermon, man. I'm enjoying the sermon. Continue.
Exactly.
We're enjoying Reverend Beyond here. It's good, man.
Yeah, exactly. We gather here today. So yeah, I think that it was really good, and I think that the other thing too is it restored my hope, because for me it was a very proactive move. I feel bad for Philly because they seem to have with all this Harden noise. They seem to have lost their way a bit in terms of free agency, losing Niang, Shake Milton, and Jalen McDaniels, of course. So, but to our roster, beyond Jalen, I think we look at, again, we have about 14 spots accounted for, including Grady Dick, who just signed his contract today, I believe, or was it yesterday? I think it was today. And we don't know the summer league roster. We do have a couple guarantees that we don't know the guaranteed dates that are coming up, including Joe Wieskamp. So we have about 1 to 2 spots left. We did just recently miss out on Malik Beasley. There are still, I don't have like the free agent chart, up in front of me, but there are some spots that we could potentially get in the mix for. And I believe we have between 4 to 6. I don't have that in front of me either, but I think it's about, say, $4 million in cap space that we can kind of play with here. So, with that being said, before we get into the current roster construction, is there any target that is out there that you all are interested in potentially getting on the Raptors that you think that we could utilize?
Coach, you want to go first on this one?
Well, I really don't know who else would be out there who's going to come in and get minutes. That's the key with all this is if you bring someone in, you're basically guaranteeing them some minutes, which means someone else is going to get pushed out. And we've lost Fred and Delano. We've added Schroeder and McDaniel. Now Schroeder's getting minutes. McDaniels is going to get minutes. You get Grady, who assuming is going to get minutes too. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I was looking at Malik Beasley, but he was picked up today because you can never have enough shooting in the NBA. PJ Washington was interesting to me. I know the Raptors have always been interested in him. I think maybe he could be an option, but he's going to cost a fair amount. That's the only thing. The guys left you're going to get are probably going to be on the minimum contracts, unless you're going to move some contracts out, get picks back, and then you'll have that cap relief. But it's hard to say to pinpoint who out there I would want moving forward.
JD?
Will Barton? No, I'm just kidding.
I brought him up on the last episode. Beyond was it was a hard nay.
No, I think one of the moves, like one of the last few moves that we're gonna do is we'll probably give a partially guaranteed contract to Jeff Doughton, right? Because like they have to save face in terms of what happened last season, like late last season. I could see that happening. And then I hope that these guys are monitoring the summer league because I think there are like a few players in there that's currently unsigned, like maybe on a 10-day or like exhibit 10 on certain teams, whether they're like rookies this year or from the last year, right? That's something that they should keep an eye on.
Interesting. I was like Coach, over the weekend. I was pushing hard for Lonnie Walker. Boy, man, would love Lonnie Walker. I was open to Beasley to some extent, but even at that point, I was starting to think about the minutes issue, and we'll get into that in a second. And I'm looking at the roster as it's constructed now. I still feel I think now we got enough wings and guards now. I don't think we got enough bigs. And that's my concern right now. I'm looking here as like, yes, we have the two centers. But when you get there after that, if Pascal were to get in foul trouble or he's out for a week or so, there's not a lot of front court guys besides Precious really that you can feel trust. Like with all due respect to Boucher, if he's even on the squad, I don't see him really as a full-on front court guy. I mean, I can see guys having bully ball with him. I want one more like a beefy dude, or at least some guy can be a shot blocker of some sort. So I'm leaning towards if you could throw him out there for a couple, million in this case here, Mo Bamba as a pickup. Just to have one more guy for shot blocking in case something goes wrong on an injury or something like that. We have a little more shot blocking because right now on this team right now, it's pretty thin once you get past the two centers. I mean, Achua is giving you some rim protection. Boucher could do it from a weak side position. But even the Mo Bamba situation, my mindset would be is I still think you have to move on from Boucher at that point. Even as it's constituted right now, I think the move is Boucher, and I guess we'll get into that why I would suggest that in a second. But I think when we start discussing that, you're gonna start seeing there's some issues here, folks.
I think if you go that route, maybe you should consider Willie Hernan Gomez.
Well, right now he can play better than the other brother, so
Yeah, he's a smart guy.
Yes.
Take that one. It didn't work out so well with the other one, so we got this one.
Just have too much trauma. I'm also thinking Thomas Bryant is also out there as a. Oh,
He got picked up.
Oh, okay. Well, that takes
Oh,
away
my.
my idea. Yeah.
Well,
So
Thanasis is available.
yeah, no, I'm good.
He's got the best job in the NBA. It's the safest
He really
job.
does.
Yeah.
He has great seats. Phenomenal seats. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and Tristan Thompson is so. But it's funny because like again, by the time this gets posted, the other one will have been posted. But I said it's like, in theory, Kem Birch would have been perfect in that role this year.
Exactly. When you said so, it's like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Like, this is the exact dude that we would need. Hey, Spurs, do you want to do another deal? Do you want more of our picks?
We've learned lessons already from the Spurs deals. It's okay. But I cracked that when you said so. It's like, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
we got to talk about Kem Birch.
Yeah.
Told me once.
You're right.
Yeah, no. But yeah, so I think the other thing could be a third guard. If it wasn't Jeff Doughton, if they targeted a prospect, this is not Nowell either, so I think he's already spoken for with a two-way. I think that would be interesting, but that probably would have to come through trade. I want to really just quickly touch on two other things. Minutes, because I think that gets into the other conversation that I really want to talk about, and how that kind of is going to be distributed. Now, I know some people freaked out and they're like, "Oh my gosh, Dennis Schroeder is going to start." I don't know if he's going to necessarily start. I think he can in spots, but I don't know if that's what they're thinking. I actually think, much to the chagrin of some people, that Masai is trying to still do Vision 6-9, but maybe with actual shooting for once, which is probably not the worst idea. So maybe do it properly. But yeah, I'm just wondering, and if we kind of just focus on the guards, and then we could talk about the forwards. I think we already know the big man rotation because we just kind of talked about it already. Between the guards and the forwards, what do you think?
The forwards need to be discussed because there's going to be an issue with those forwards.
Yes. Yes. So before we get into the forwards, though, the guard spot is going to be interesting because it's really the shooting guard that is. Obviously there's going to be Gary. I think there's Grady. But I'm not really sure. To me, okay, here's the real question. Is Otto Porter, because I think he can play shooting guard in spots. If you needed to get him an extra 5 minutes and he was complaining about minutes, is he more of a forward, I guess, for this team? I would say so, but if that's kind of settled, then we can kind of probably move to the forwards, I guess.
I just don't think at this stage of his career with the injury, he had the mobility to stick in front of twos.
Right.
I think you just risk it. We know him. He's like glass in this case here. So you're not trying to put him in a position that, have him out there running around behind picks, in this case of 3-point lines. Like, I mean, he'll get caught in some switches, but I think you want him on small forwards, and in a pinch, probably power forwards. Depending on the circumstance, if you're playing a smaller lineup, I don't think you want to go any further than that. That's my opinion, but I don't know what the guys think. But I think that you just want to keep him there if possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. I think Otto is a 3-4 in this NBA. I think on offense he can play some 2. I just don't like kind of what Beyond just said. I don't want him chasing guards around the court. So if he's with someone else on the floor, let's just say he's on the floor with McDaniels and I don't know, Precious, let's just say, for example, have Otto maybe guard one of the bigger forwards and have one of those guys chase one of the guards around as well. Because with Otto, you really could use his shooting. moving forward. And I think Kenyon, you showed last year before the season started, like his defense is really good for
Yeah,
crafted.
I'm about to say like he's arguably one of about 3 or 4 best defenders we have on the team. Like when he's healthy, he's like
when he's healthy.
Right. Well,
But
of
yes.
course, it's always the case. From the time he came out, when he's in college in Georgetown, it was the
Yes.
case. But
Yes.
it's always been the case.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with what Coach said, and I think we are entering at Otto Porter's career where he shouldn't be taxed to do a lot defensively because like it's just gonna break down.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the Iggy role, but for us,
Yeah,
in a way,
that's
which is
what I
kind of
was
cool.
thinking. Yeah.
And I think the way that I say it is he's right for us. I joked earlier and I said he's a 2-game player, but because of the play-in. But you kind of see him as like quote unquote 16-game player because when he needs to show up, he can show up, he can be ready. But it's just that durability.
Yeah, we had to wrap in bubble wrap for the whole season again too.
Yes, exactly. Which is exactly it. So,
Yeah.
So
If- Sorry, if anyone needs to be load managed on this team, it's him.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was gonna say that too. Like he shouldn't be playing back to backs or 3 games in 4 nights. Like
Yep.
2 games a week maybe.
No, yeah. The other person that's very I guess very interesting is Flynn. We don't have to get into it right now, but how he figures into this if there's no other roster moves that are made is interesting because right now it's like you kind of already have that backup guard spoken for. So I don't know if they're planning on allowing him to get some shine elsewhere in the NBA so that he can try to, advertise his talents. But if not, I guess we can probably move on to the forwards.
I'll say what Flynn is that I agree. I personally hope that they move on from him just to give him a chance to actually see if he can kind of resuscitate his career. But I also think the other thing too is, unfortunately for him, the backup guard they picked, from his standpoint, I'm not sure. You correct me if I'm wrong, folks, but I don't recall Schroeder really missing many games. Like he's a guy that misses a ton of games. He plays a lot of games, so it's not like you're gonna have an opportunity through an injury to get a little run that you would get in this case in the previous regime.
I mean, I think with this new coach, if he's gonna come in as the third point guard, like he might get some real reps, like being the lead guard. I don't know. Like we'll see, right? Like I think I still think that he should move. Like we should move on from Flynn, but I'm not comfortable with Dalton as our third backup or second backup point guard.
Right. I'm saying this just from a basketball perspective, not a Raptors perspective. But for Flynn's sake, I hope that he gets an opportunity somewhere else to play. If it's a young team like a Charlotte or, we don't know what Portland's going to look like kind of this year as well. I hope he just gets a chance to play somewhere else, just get away from Nick Nurse more or less.
You know who needs a backup point guard right now?
Philly. I'm just kidding.
Philly.
I mean, they do, but it's just like that's cruel. Like the man can't escape. You just have the what is it? The meme with the "Here's Johnny," right? Yeah. So, with that being said, we're gonna probably move to the forwards. That's where things get interesting, like you were saying, Beyond. Where I keep asking the question every single week this far is that how do you get the two dudes, one of which we've already established is not a center, and one people say he could be, but realistically the backup center spot is kind of already spoken for. How do you get both Precious and Boucher 20 minutes? Now, Coach, I haven't had a chance to ask you it, and JD, I haven't had a chance to ask you it either, but it is a conundrum right now, in my opinion.
Right. Well, we assume there's going to be Koloko, and it should be Christian Koloko as well. But we won't know until the season really starts up and we see who gets minutes. I know, but the only thing that does worry about me, Chloe, and I know I've said it before, but I'm gonna have to wait and see till he starts playing, is the foul trouble. He was in foul trouble a lot last year for his, probably not his own doing. He gets the rookie treatment, right? I don't think he's going to get that kind of treatment this year, and they're going to play a different defensive style as well. But it's going to be tough for Boucher and Precious to get consistent minutes. Um, I think Precious is the one that's younger, more upside. Um, Boucher's the one where you kind of know what you're going to get from him from game to game. With Precious, you're not quite sure yet. So that's going to be interesting to see these two kind of battle it out for minutes. And I'll say actually the three of them, Boucher, Precious, and Koloko.
You just reminded me of Forrest Gump saying, like your precious like a box of chocolates. You don't know what you're gonna get, but it's true. So I think I can't remember who I was talking to. It was I think it was actually, I was gonna credit it with JD, but I think it was actually a guy named Daryl that I was talking to, and he basically said that you have to put not Boucher, Precious in a role in this Darko system where he has two options, where it's like you either drive to the hoop or you're shooting corner threes, and that's it. No decision making, no decision making. And if you do that and you refine his skill set in that way, it sounds like it's pigeonholing the dude, but it's actually not, because you're giving him an NBA skill that you can really grow, and then from there you can then go to the next step. Any thoughts on that?
No,
I mean, it worked with Serge Ibaka, right?
great example. Great example. Great
Mhm.
example. Yeah, if you just give someone in this case a smaller diet that they can manage, that's what you should be doing. I think for certain type of players, especially for Precious, I think that's required. I think letting Precious kind of do what he wants is the classic example of jack of all trades and master of none. So now you're sitting here, it's like, well, he's not really a great shooter. He's not really, he's not really focusing on rebounding. He's not, his defense could be up and down at times, even though when we see it at his peak, it's unbelievable. You throw in there, it's like post play and passing sometimes can be a little bit questionable. So just say you do this and that's it. It'll simplify things. But I think the issue right now, I can't believe I haven't said this in like 3 years for Raptor teams. I'm not sure there's enough minutes for everybody. I just look at how this team's set up. Now, coach has said shiver up my spine, which is quite possible. That it's Koloko's the odd man out, and that just said shiver up my spine. Like, oh, please, don't tell me we're going to experiment for 20 games with this again and get back the same result that we figured out at the end of the season. You might need to play 2 7-footers, with each other. I hope that Darko's not going to go down that road. I don't think he's going to go down that road. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I think there's elements of like how Triple J looks and how he was actually used in the Memphis's defense that I think he's going to find very fascinating with Christian Koloko. And I don't think, and I especially what we don't know. I know everyone's, from the young guy standpoint, everyone's excited to see what Grady's going to do. Obviously, with the question mark with Scotty, the guy I'm watching for is Koloko, because in my mind, in some ways, he's almost as much of a ceiling raiser as Scotty is. Because if he comes out, say he's got 15 pounds on him, and to Coach's point, he's getting more discipline on defense. All of a sudden now we are in a whole new world, boys, like Aladdin. We in a whole new world now. We all of a sudden we got stuff we didn't think we have now. We all have a defensive stopper, perhaps. We have now a game changer on that side of the court. And if he's getting that strong, offense means you now may have a legitimate rim runner now, which makes things even interesting from that standpoint. So to me, he's a guy that can raise the ceiling as much as almost Scotty in some ways if he becomes the player that I think he could become. So I hope that we don't go through experiment 20 games, figure this out again. And to me, that means I feel in this case, the guy that might be at the short of the stick, and I was hinting at it before, is Boucher. Because to me, going back to Coach's point, he's the oldest dude there. There's not much upside. He is what he is at this point. And if you really want to find out what you have in Precious coming up to a contract, you need to know now. And Koloko was a second round draft pick, so we don't have the luxury of waiting around for 2 more years with him.
Absolutely. I think JD, you were going to say something real.
No, I was just gonna say, like, if I see Koloko like down in the 905, I'd be upset.
Right. You might drive him back
Yes.
to the Scotiabank
Yeah.
Arena, right?
Yeah,
So,
like what? You got lost?
Yep.
you want to ride back to the
Yeah,
Bay Street?
the gardener's that way, right?
I hear you, my man. I hear you.
But I'll,
Mm.
I'll say this though, is I'm just gonna turn the clock back a little bit. The year it was 2016, we went to the conference finals. Who really shined in the conference finals? It was Bismack Biyombo. Everybody was like, "Man, we got to bring this guy back." Couldn't afford him. Orlando threw a lot of money at him, but we had drafted Pirtle that year. Pirtle got a lot of time in the 905. He was like the third string center, more or less. That next year, Masai and Dwayne Casey, we have to give this guy a chance. And it worked out for them. The bench mob basically just broke out that year, where Siakam and Pirtle and Fred and DeLon, and they had the old vet CJ Miles in there as well with them. So those guys got an opportunity. Koloko needs to get an opportunity if he was in the same place, kind of where Pirtle was that year. Um, so I really hope that they do that because, like Beyond said, if you could have Pirtle and Koloko for the next 3 to 5 years, you might have like elite rim protection from your two bigs. They're in different ways, though, when I say that. Pirtle, it's about altering shots, it's about angling your body. Koloko, it will be some of that, but it's his wingspan. It's just his athleticism, too, as well, added to it.
And just to follow up with Coach, we saw this in the last month of the season, where teams were going down the lane and missing bunny layups because they're just looking here. They could feel the presence of him just around the hoop. Where they're like, where is he? Like they're just trying. They had eyes in the back of their head, just worried about let me just short arm layups because they didn't want to get blocked. And that was just in that small space of time where he started to figure out where he should be. The fouls started to drop. To Coach's point, they started pulling back on the defense where it wasn't as aggressive as it was. It can't get much more aggressive in this case. It was like the dial was on 10, okay? So for the pull back, where it's like, okay, we'll play more drop to kind of help Pirtle out. And I think Koloko also relished in that position where he could kind of drop and roam the paint. And guys on the opposition were like sitting there like wondering what's going on, where is he? And he was starting to get that reputational factor now where the referees were going to let them play a little bit more in the last month of the season. He closed games for us late in the season. Right, like people forget that he was on some closing lines late in the game. So I don't see why he should be going down there and hanging out with JD next year. There's no
no offense to JD,
but no offense taken. I don't want to see him there. Yeah,
he should be down there with you.
Yeah, I mean, I first video that I did on this channel was Koloko. I believe in the young man. I think, again, I keep saying people, Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, they usually pan out and they usually can defend. His ability to rotate and quickly, his foot speed and his, I want to say nimbleness, but that's not really the best way. It's almost like an agility that he has with his feet on both ends of the ball is pretty impressive. He also showed a couple passing chops. And
he can pass.
I had debates with a couple of RR dudes, and then I showed them I think it was against Miami, and they were like, okay, yeah, that's fair. I'm like, yeah, he could pass. And so I think, yeah, you're right, Coach. I saw even in on the 905 that he had a couple problems with fouls at times. A little bit of things with the turnover issue, but you're not expecting him to initiate offense. I'm excited to see him in terms of the weight aspect. I think if Chet can supposedly put on 13 pounds in a year, you would hope that Koloko could put on, at least, the same amount.
Right. I don't think that's impossible. And here's the other thing too. He has a point guard to throw lobs to him.
Yes, that is true.
That's a new element to this discussion.
That is true because both well, first of all, of the people that passed to him, it was really only two. If you think about it on this team last year, it was Siakam passing to his countryman and Barnes, and that was it.
Right.
I remember we
shall not shoot. Christian,
Yes.
thou shalt not shoot.
Yes.
That was like the commandment. Thou shalt not shoot, Christian.
Yes. Even though didn't he get like a game winner for us?
Yeah, without desperation, he shot the three. I think shot clock was right out. He knocked down a three from the corner. It pretty much won us the game.
Phoenix.
Yeah,
Yes.
but the thing is, he has some offensive ability. But once again, this goes back to who gets the opportunity to kind of do whatever they want and who doesn't, which is the consistency we had last year. Guys could pull up from 30 feet, even though they have no business doing so, but they're allowed to do so. Other guys can't really even look at the rim.
And just to finish that point, because I don't know if JD or if it was Beyond earlier, you guys had mentioned about the role definition. We had Dwayne Casey. You played within your role, and that was it. You do not go outside your box, more or less. You had Nick Nurse, grab the rebound, do whatever you want, bring it up the court, dribble it off your foot, whatever. With Darko, I hope it's somewhere in the middle. It's like, okay, this is your role, but if you do a little bit more, that's fine. Don't go overboard with it right now. So I hope that Darko's philosophy is a little bit in the middle in terms of role definition between those two, because they're two somewhat extremes up the spectrum of Nurse and Casey.
Well, I think with Darko, the one thing that I liked to hear about is the fact that he seems to take in ideas from the players and then within that box say, okay, let's try to like make it work for you. And I think that that's important, both from like a respect and acknowledgement standpoint, as well as sometimes from an accountability standpoint. Really quickly, since we're getting to the close of this, and it is getting late, people, you could tell from the background. I'll say this. It will be interesting to see with the Summer League, because this is going to come out before Summer League. I want to know what our Summer League roster is. And so I know there's a couple guys that I've seen. Obviously, Koloko will be there. I don't know. Would Jeff Doughton actually be there?
For Jeff Doughton's sake, I hope he's not there.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting low. When you hit age 26, right, 26. It hits a bit different going back.
I mean, that's trouble for him, honestly, if he's in the Summer League.
Yeah, you don't want to be the Drew Timmy of Summer League.
Yeah. Like if the Raptors don't know exactly what they have in doubt at this point, they ain't never going to know if that's the case. That's my point.
No, yeah. we won't see Batten, that's for sure. The other person, sorry, that hurts different. I think the other person that will be interesting to see, of course, we will see Grady Dick as well. We will see Joe Weezy, so we're gonna definitely see a shoot off between those two dudes. You know, and I think we have a feeling of who's probably gonna win right now based on the college season. But it will be interesting to see. Nowell is going to be on that roster, and I'm very interested to see him. He does a lot of interesting jump passes. I think that that's his way of overcoming his height, and he's a quick decision maker from that standpoint, very bursty guard. Really quickly, thoughts on him on the Summer League roster, because again, as Raptors, we don't know what the Summer League roster is until last minute.
I'll throw this out here, man. Like, I mean, he's a gamer, no two ways about it. I'm just curious, could he actually make the actual roster?
Maybe not this year. I think he could get spot minutes just because, you know, we're a little bit weak at that point right now. So I think, you know, they'll probably utilize his two-way contract.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I'm just wondering if we might see him up there more than we think at this point. And I say, like, you know, because I think right now I was thinking of him as like a throwaway of just playing the 905 and call it a day. But I'm not sure if like that's how the Raptors are thinking right now with him. The Raptors love their small point guards, man. Boy, it's been a tradition like no other.
I mean,
the day they did the inception of this team, they love their little point guards.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a little bit afraid of that, because not because of him, it's because I feel like we need stability on the 905, and in that system, that's just my opinion. Is like I want someone who you know is going to be down there, you know, who can run an offense. And
I think that would be sad.
I mean, no Summer League for you, but just that's okay. We have a special role for you, sir.
I think there's a path. Like the path I can think of is historically, like whoever plays point for the 905, if they're good, like they're gonna have like a great season, like maybe like in the running for like an MVP or like one of those awards down there. And if he performs like above expectations, then he can get that, like Lorenzo Brown treatment where, he might get like the last roster spot before the season ends. That's what I can think of. But I don't think he's gonna make the regular roster lineup like during the training camp. I don't think that's on the table for him.
I'm super pumped to see this guy play summer league because I love watching him play Kansas State. What he did in the NCAA tournament,
Mhm.
it was phenomenal. Like the
Yeah.
passing, the vision, the decision making that he made. Um, this is a guy in summer league. He might average 10 assists a game, and it wouldn't shock me. He's got Grady Dick in one quarter. He's got Joe Wieskamp in another, and he's throwing it up to Koloko. It will not shock me if he averages 10 assists in summer league.
I throw it out there because between the pedigree of what the Raptors have done historically with small guards, I mean, we literally just walked one out the door in this case here, who sound really, when JD mentioned the story, you literally could put a rubber stamp and you could say, change the names and you could put Fred VanVleet.
Mhm.
Same thing, same resume, same thing.
I mean, he did call him. He did say, my twin just left. So,
Just saying, so like, I don't think it's that preposterous to think this dude might find a spot. And that's why this spot's sitting here and they're waiting.
yes,
That's a scenario that I'm just throwing out there. I'm not saying it can happen. I know a lot of people think it's for trades and maybe for a potential free agent. But the other scenario might be is like, well, let's see what this kid's got. And let's see first before we do anything. That might just very well be it. One last point in the summer league from my standpoint. I want to see what type of plays they run for Grady. That is something I'm very curious to see.
that's a very good point.
Spot up, they're gonna run some stuff around like some Klay Thompson type action around some curls and stuff like that. I want to see how they deploy Grady. That's
Do we know if Darko's going to coach the team? Because I know Nurse is coaching his team. We just saw that on TV not that long ago.
Considering he's a first year coach, and some of these dudes are going to be on his roster.
He might.
I would.
You see, talk to a coach here. I would.
Yeah.
Right. You want to get as much tell me, Coach Roache, you want to get as much connection with them as possible, and especially this day in the NBA where everyone's got their agents and they're doing stuff on Instagram. They got to do this for this and that. You can't pass up that real estate, that time in this case where you could be coaching them. But you got three guys that might be on that roster on that team, right? At the moment,
Yeah.
Koloko, Grady, at least three. So yeah.
Good point. Very good point. JD, any final thoughts on that?
No, I think that's fine. I'm looking at the roster, like potential roster. Like I went through this with Beyond later. Like there's really no other point guard in there that's going to take a lot of minutes from Nowell. So yeah, like we could be looking at like a good like summer league for Nowell.
True. I mean, and even from the standpoint, I talked about 905, having a good, solid point guard at Summer League is super important. It's super important to see kind of what you have.
I am looking forward to watch this Des Cambridge kid too from ASU. I am fascinated by him. Like, I mean, he's interesting. Let's put it that way. The profile is very similar to some guards that we did get the pick with a second pick. And his profile, at least as from a size and physicality standpoint, looks very similar. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think let's not forget too. Ron Harper. I think he's going to start for this team. He'll be there.
Right, yeah. Because I was going to ask, because I think he had his contract guaranteed as a two-way. I think.
Yeah, I think it was picked up, but like Nowell, Grady, Wieskamp, Harper, and Koloko. I'm hoping that's the five roughly, and I think it will be since they're all Raptors players per se. And then you have, like Beyond said, the Cambridge kid, and there's a couple others that they signed as well. So Harper had a triple double this year in 905. I think he had one. JD, am I correct on that?
Oh, he was actually playing like backup point guard for like the last 10 games.
Oh.
Right, so he's like a point forward out there, and especially when Doughton wasn't there, like he's playing point.
Okay.
How's his shooting come along? Because he's known as a shooter coming out of college. Like,
It's tricky. It goes in when it goes in, but it's ugly.
Yes, it is. I watched it when they played up here at the Scarborough campus when they had the little run. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like it don't look pretty, but yeah. But then again, his father's wasn't a pretty stroke either, kind of,
Yeah.
Sean Marion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once it goes in, it don't matter.
It don't matter.
Yeah, so I think like it'll be interesting to see the summer league. I'm wondering just my final thoughts because we're getting to the close of this. My last question for all of you. Now this is assuming that OKC doesn't bring the roster that they just showed today to Vegas, because if they do that, I'm gonna bet on them to win. Because Jalen Williams is playing and stuff like that. I don't know why, but do you think we could potentially win Summer League? I mean, I know it's not like the most important thing, but it's nice. I think they get the ring and they get a little bit of bonus or whatever.
No.
Fair enough.
Yeah, you might see Portland's entire roster
Roster.
there.
Oh, right. I forgot. I keep forgetting about Portland. True.
Yeah,
This is gonna be like Scoot and a whole bunch of other dudes.
Scoop,
and,
Sharp.
and
I think you'll see him for a few games.
would Sharp
Murray.
play?
I will see why he wouldn't play.
He's been practicing.
Yeah, that's true. Good point. Good point. Good point. Very good point. They're yeah.
Yeah, I think we lost our opportunity to win the summer league when DeLon Wright got injured like several years ago. So we had Yak, DeLon, Siakam, Fred, like those guys.
In the finals last year?
We were close. We were one game off.
We got eliminated by points, right?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean that team there had Flynn going crazy. I just don't see what type of team we have compared to some of these teams that have so many draft picks. They're just loading up like blue chip draft picks. Like I just don't see how we're gonna win some of these games.
I mean, you saw like literally today OKC like sitting dudes, Taylor Hendricks sitting,
For Utah, yeah.
Bryce Sensabaugh sitting, and it's like
Utah's
that's a whole other discussion. We don't have time today, but like that's another discussion.
Management for summer league.
Load management for summer league. Jeez. There's a whole issue with sports management, people. Future
Right.
episode. But with that being said, it's been fun chopping it up with you guys. I mean, we chop it up all the time, anyways. And so yeah, JD, we'll definitely have you on soon, because it is, even though it's not necessarily writing season for you right now, which people I will have links in the description down below. Check his work out. I know it's still going to be basketball watching season for all of us. So with that being said, JD, for you, is there anything that you want to plug since you're here?
Oh, nothing. I'm not writing anything right now, so
Fair enough. Anyone else want to plug anything that's coming up, or if not, yeah.
I think we're good, man. I don't have
Everyone's
anything.
like a good life.
Brady versus Wieskamp making threes.
I'm really curious to see that, because I was like, who makes more or something. Anyways, with that being said, people, it's been fun. It's been Basketball Rewind. Like, comment, subscribe, and leave any sort of information down below about this episode if you want us to talk about something specific in Summer League. As that information comes out, I'll probably be making a post on it on this channel. But yeah, definitely let me know. Any feedback, let me know. With that being said, it's been great, and peace.